Well, good morning and welcome to the ETS 6 Roadshow 2026. It's great that we've got so many of you online this morning. It's fantastic, and looking forward to presenting a whole bunch of information about ETS 6, particularly ETS 6.4, and some of the new things going on in ETS, where it's moving to, and how to make the best use of it. So let's get into it then, and we're going to look at firstly system extensions. So some of these we will have covered previously, and if you were at the event last year, we would have talked about things like segment couplers previously, and they've been around for a little while. So hopefully you have used them already. If not, I'm sure you'll find ways of using them. So why were they introduced? Well, really to allow us to have greater flexibility and simplified installation, as well as give us control over the bus load. So what they allow us to do is break a line up into segments and not have to introduce new lines unnecessarily. So for example, if you look in the diagram here, we've got some RF devices and a new extension that's to the line that's going outside. And we're using segment couplers to just branch off an existing line there. And that means we don't have to install a new line. We don't have to try and create the line infrastructure that we would need. In other words, getting it back to the backbone, for example. We can just extend an existing line or branch off that and give ourselves a little segment. And that segment can be KNX Secure, for example. It can be a different media type. So we can come off and have a RF segment off a twisted pair line. We can have multiple segments per line, which gives us a lot more scalability. So for example, in multiple dwelling units, for example, we can have multiple segments, one per room, and that gives us flexibility. It gives us the same functionality we get in a line coupler with filter tables, so we can make sure the traffic that's only needed on that segment isn't going elsewhere across the line. Gives us a lot of flexibility when it comes to KNX Secure. So we can have a segment that is secure whilst the rest of the line is not secure. So for example, if we've got RF devices outside, as in this scenario in the image, that means those devices are going to be communicating securely, even though the rest of the line may not be able to do that. So lots of benefits to be able to use with segment couplers. So I take a look at them. Most of the devices that you'll be able to get on the marketplace now that are line couplers, they'll have an application program that will allow them to operate as a segment coupler as well. So really, really flexible, useful devices to use. So what about the next one? Security proxies. Well, this is a little bit related to segment couplers. So devices that are acting as segment couplers or line couplers that are KNX secure, they can act as a proxy. So what that means is that anything on the secure side of that coupler is going to communicate in a secure way. But the media coupler or the line coupler, the segment coupler, is going to translate the telegrams that go through and either add security to them or take the security away as needed, so that you can still have secure communications where you're enabling or you're able to have those secure communications going on. So it gives you lots of opportunity to bring KNX Secure to existing installations, and please take advantage of that. So many devices now are KNX Secure. Any new project that you're doing, you can introduce this in. If you're introducing extensions onto existing projects, then you can bring security into that, no problem at all. And in combination with segment couplers, really, really flexible and makes it very easy to implement security on an existing installation without having to replace all of the devices. KNX RF multi-devices. So you may be aware of KNX RF Ready. That was the original RF protocol that was inside the standard. Now you've got RF multi. That enables us to have acknowledgements coming back. It enables us to have the difference between fast and slow communication So it allows us to have really, really efficient devices where they don't need to do a lot of communication. So, for example, heating actuators that don't need to have lots of quick communication going on, but rely on batteries. Those can use the slow part of the multi-protocol and enables us to have long battery life. Or we can have devices that need quick, fast transmission and receiving of telegrams. So, for example, anything like a sensor or maybe something like a lighting actuator, and those can work on the fast side of the protocol, particularly if they've got 230 or some power going to them. So that gives us energy efficiency, it gives us network stability because we've got multiple channels, and it enables us to have new device types that communicate more efficiently and give us two-way communication that we didn't have with the KNX RF Ready. So RF is a really useful part of the standard, and a really great thing to look at if you need to extend again your installation or finding that you've got somewhere where you can't use wires. KNX RF is there, ready to use, secure, and very, very efficient. So how do we bring this together? Well, when we're looking at our system devices and our extensions, we can have KNX secure devices placed anywhere. We can combine all sorts of media, whether it's KNX line couplers, media couplers, segment couplers that are doing twisted pair or RF or IoT. We can bring all of those in together in one installation. We can have secure remote access. So it makes KNX a really secure ecosystem for our installation. With something that really is not possible with most other protocols out there, and certainly when you're looking at residential systems, isn't really being supported to any great extent out there by anything else other than KNX. So a really, really great backbone for all of your devices and all of your products that you want to put into somebody's home and into commercial installations, into MDUs, into hotels. KNX is a really great flexible solution, and we've got fantastic performance now. We can have topologies that are more tolerant. We can scale things so much more easily. We can filter things so much more easily, even when you've got lots of segments on a line. All of that works really, really well. So our performance, our efficiency, it's all there with these KNX extensions that have been brought in ETS 6 and developed through ETS 6. So if you're not using ETS 6 already, please think about moving across so you can take advantage of all of these really, really great improvements. We also get the KNX IoT, so Internet of Things extension as well. This is something that I think is going to really grow and maybe is going to be where we see most of the growth in our wireless, our RF product development, I think, over time, just because of how secure it is, how flexible it is, and how it's working on protocols like Thread. So basically, we've got the KNX IoT Point API. This is the protocol that allows communication between devices using the KNX IoT protocol. So it's native IPv6 compared to KNX IP, which is or KNX Net IP, I should say, which is over IPv4. It can be on Thread, on Wi-Fi, on Ethernet, even single pair Ethernet. And it gives us the communication between sensors and actuators. And if all you've got is IoT devices talking to each other, then they can talk on the IoT Point API, no problem at all. They don't need anything else. And it's really secure. So it's got end-to-end encryption, but we can make it fully interoperable with twisted pair, RF, and KNX Net IP through the use of a KNX IoT router. And that allows us to connect our IoT devices to the rest of the KNX topology. So you can bring it into ETS and everything works exactly the same. So you have your IoT devices in ETS, you have your RF devices in ETS, your IP and your TP, twisted pair devices, all inside ETS, all working in exactly the same way. So you can bring these into any project, even if it's 20 years old, highly backwards compatible, as we know. So excellent advantages with the IoT system extension. So how does this actually work? Well, if you imagine a typical KNX installation now, where we've got some twisted pair devices, so we've got a couple of lines there with an area going through to an IP router, and that's connected to a switch. So that gives us some connectivity to the outside world, to some visualization, for example, or whatever else it might be. But we can connect our IoT devices to that as well. So we can have a thread border router. So the thread border router is basically what's giving us the point connectivity between devices on IoT. And then you have a KNX IoT router, and that's providing us the flexibility and the connectivity back to the rest of the KNX network. And there's devices out there that perform those functions. So, for example, Siemens have a device, and some other manufacturers have these devices available right now. You can get them, you can install them, you can use IoT devices in your KNX installations already. And I think we're going to see this area growing over the next year or two, as more and more manufacturers get on board with IoT devices and bring them into the KNX world. So we're really looking forward to seeing that. And that's something that you need ETS 6 for. So again, if you haven't already got ETS 6 and using ETS, please think about migrating to it ASAP and experience these benefits. So what about the latest version of ETS 6? ETS 6.4 has been out for a few months now, came out earlier this year, and does offer some specific enhancements over ETS 6.3. So let's have a look at those. The first one is multi-linking, and this is a big step forward in efficiency for how we can link objects very quickly. So it basically allows us to take a bunch of similar objects. In this case, we're looking at a dimming actuator, and every dimming actuator, we typically are going to have 5 objects that we're going to link for each channel that we want to control. We're going to have a switching object, an absolute dimming value, a relative dimming value, and then a 1-bit status object and a brightness status, a 1-byte object. And typically, we're going to want to link all of those. Now, in old school ETS, we have to make those links one by one, and we can do that with something like we've got here with a building view and maybe a group address view, panel open as well. Or we've got this new option that came out in ETS 6 earlier with the groups on the right-hand side, which we find in our own work really, really useful. A great way of organizing groups and using them to connect. We like this view. But in there, you'll see that we've got some groups in there related to each of the same circuits that are represented on this dimming actuator. And we would normally have to link those one by one. But the multi-linking allows us to link all of those at the same time. And it just goes, right, okay, I'm going to take the order that I've got the groups addresses in, and I'm going to apply those to the group objects and make those links in there. So let's have a look at how that might work. So if I click the little video button here and press play, you'll see that this is how we might do it in old school ETS. Make those links one by one and dragging either a group to the object or the object to the group. What we can do is do a multi-select. So we select all the objects and then also select a matching set of groups and then drag one to the other, pressing the Alt key as we do that. And when we press that Alt key, it knows to do this multi-link. And what it will do is it will go, right, I'll take the first group and put it to the first group object, the second group to the second group object. And that works really quickly and allows us to do this multi-linking. Now, it is fairly basic at the moment, in as much as the order is the critical thing. So if you want to get your group objects matching into the right group addresses, the order of those need to match. So in other words, if I had a slightly different order to my group objects as some actuators might have. So, for example, they may have the relative dimming before the absolute dimming. For example, they may have a status in the different order. Then I would need to just tweak the order of my groups to allow me to do that multi-linking. Which can be a little bit frustrating or a little bit confusing at first, but once you understand what you're doing with that, it still can be done very quickly. There is an app that's available now, the Bulk Linker, which makes this even easier, and I think we will see this change soon because of what's called the semantic tagging that's coming along inside devices. So with semantic tagging, it means that the manufacturers can add in additional information, contextual information about what their devices are doing and what each object is doing. So, for example, with this actuator, it would know that it's not just a switching channel, but it's switching a light. It's not just a dimming absolute value, it's going to be related to a light. It's not just a 1 byte value, a 4-bit value, a 1-bit value. It's going to have the context of actually what is that controlling. So far more functional. And we're seeing this already in the way that we're presented with the buildings view when we go into ETS now, and that you can add functions like a light or a blind into a space. So far more intuitive for people that maybe are not so attuned into getting straight to group addresses and topology from day one, and understanding the differences between data point types and the relationships between data point types. So I think this will be a big help in bringing people more quickly to efficient ways of programming ETS, and certainly open up the opportunity for AI as well. And we'll look at smart linking a little bit later, which is another step with this semantic description of contextual information about what devices are actually doing. So we can now do also starting options with our what mode we want ETS to start up in. So, for example, with a native mode or compatibility mode. So the native mode is 64-bit, and that's what we want to start in by default. However, if we are looking at older projects which are using plugins as opposed to ETS apps, they generally want to be in 32-bit compatibility mode. It's slower, but it does mean that we can open up these older projects with plugins. And if you've used ETS for a long time, you know exactly what I'm talking about there. But natively now we can have this new option that starts straight away in 64-bit and means that it runs more quickly in there. Download via serial number. I don't know if you've used that, but it's really brought a lot of efficiency into commissioning. So if you know the serial number devices and they are on the boxes, they're on the labeling on each device now. If you put those into your ETS project, then it means you don't need to press the programming button on devices. You just download by the serial number. So very much more simple. And makes commissioning a lot more quick and a lot more easy, where you're not having to go and either pre-commission or go around pressing the programming button on devices. You can just use a serial number, which is great. However, previously you used to have to select that every time you downloaded the device, or each device as you downloaded to it, you had to select that, use the serial number for the download. But now you've got this setting that just says use download via serial number on all downloads, and that will just automatically do that then. So make it a lot quicker. You don't have to select that option specifically for each device. What about backups and archives? Hopefully you're using the archive feature, the project archive and linked folders. Hopefully you're using that already. It's a great way of enabling you to make sure your projects are not just on your local machine, but on an archive. And those archives can be on a cloud folder, so a Dropbox folder, an iCloud, whatever cloud service that you're using. You can have your archive on a cloud folder, which means it's and you can use linked folders to have multiple places that you have archive projects in. You're obviously using archives to share projects with team members. So if you've got a multi-team environment, it means that you can have an archive which you can check a project out of. You lock the project. It means that another team member is going to see it's locked, not do anything with it. If there's any differences between the version in the archive and the version locally, you'll see those. And we'll talk about project tracing as well a little bit later. But what happens if you forget to make a backup to the archive? Well, this collaboration mode means that it's always going to do that. It's always going to back up an archive when you do your close, which is great. So it means that you're backing up to the cloud without even having to think about it. And every time you close the project, you'll get a new version. So you'll just keep it backed up in your archive, and if your archive's on a cloud, it's really safe and secure. So it really helps you with your workflow. So if you're not using the archive, please use that. I really strongly recommend it, even if you're just only using ETS on your own, because it just means you can not have to rely on your local storage. You can put that archive on a cloud storage, and then if you're using automatically backup, then it just means that you're very, very unlikely to lose any work because you're using the archive and potentially using cloud storage. So great option there. Something else that is going to be really helpful for many integrators that are working in larger projects like hotels and multi-dwelling units is the ability to model it properly. So in old school ETS, and indeed ETS 6.3, you could never build a building view that had apartments in there properly. So once you put a floor in, that was it. You could only put rooms effectively into that floor. But now you can put another building part, so that you can have a building part, so like an apartment block, then floors, and then other building parts which represent your apartments. And then you can have floors and areas and all your structure inside the apartment. So you get a proper hierarchy in there. And that's really good. We've seen so many MDUs, hotels, etc. Now with KNX in there, that this is a really, really welcome development. And particularly again, as we move to a more functional representation of our projects. What about this one? Firmware updates. So here I can select a device and directly from inside ETS go update firmware, pick a package, etc. Now this is a new type of file, a KNX FWP firmware package. So this is in addition to the product database that would normally come along from a KNX manufacturer, and allows that firmware to be updated. So instead of even having to do that through an ETS app or through a third-party tool as it was previously, you can do this from within ETS. Now, this is part of an effort to make ETS compliant with the CRA, which is the EU Cyber Resilience Act. Now, here in the UK, we don't obviously have to conform to that inside the UK. We do have a similar a Producer Security and Telecoms Act that kind of does some of the same things as the CRA, but not everything. But it's important to note that if you want to be able to have secure firmware updates or secure firmware updates, is actually part of the CRA. So this is why they're doing this inside ETS now, to help all the manufacturers comply with the CRA easily. And it's also worth noting that if you do any product development of a digital product, and that could be software that then goes out to the EU, it's going to have to comply with the CRA. So this makes it easy for any UK manufacturer to make sure that their firmware and their products are compliant with the CRA without really having to do very much. So this is a really interesting and useful extra or addition into ETS 6.4. Simple one, in the archive you can sort by modified in there as well, as opposed to all the other options you had in there. So you can sort your archive a little bit more efficiently and see projects that you've worked on recently. So useful little advantage. Room and functions in group views. So this is something that you didn't have in a group address because it wasn't really important. I mean, it was really what was called trades, and now these building functions and building parts, they're becoming far more integral to understanding what devices are doing and where they are. So this functional view of a project. So rather than it just being a topology and group addresses, this building view, this understanding of where things are inside a building and what they are doing. So this is a light inside the home cinema. That's coming far more important in how we are looking at using ETS in the future and presenting our projects. Little one, now if you've got twisted pair couplers, which you're using as repeaters, if you still are using that, and it still may be needed if you want to get really long line distances, for example, if you're using that, just to highlight in ETS now that it's being used as a repeater, which means it doesn't have filter tables. Normally you'd use this now as a segment coupler, but if you're deliberately using it as a repeater, or you've accidentally put a segment coupler in as a repeater, then it's just going to remind you of this here so that you know you're not going to get the benefit of filter tables on that. I mentioned smart linking earlier and semantic tagging. So now if you're using devices that have got smart linking enabled with them, you're going to see them as little green devices as opposed to grey devices in your catalogs and in your device views inside ETS. So what does smart linking mean, or smart linking ready? It just means that those devices have got these semantic, contextual metadata associated with them, so that inside these, for example, these MDD devices here, it knows what the channels are doing specifically, the functions that they're related to. So whether it's heating functions or lighting functions or some specific switching function, it knows about that. And ETS can make far more useful and intelligent decisions about linking. So for example, it's going to know to link certain types of groups together with certain type of group objects to make that really quick. So AI is going to be able to take advantage of that, but also visualization. So when this comes out in what's called a turtle export, which is a new type of export file that we've got in ETS 6, that's going to have all that semantic information in there as well, which means a visualization can make very quick and easy decisions about how to render a particular set of group addresses. It's going to know, well, this is a dim light, so I'm going to display a dim light function here rather than just some generic options, or have to have it set up by the integrator. So it's going to make for very rapid visualization. So if you want to know more, there's release notes on ETS 6.4. There's some known issues, and you can submit a support request if you need to. So ETS 6.4, some great advances, and I would just get out there and install it. Just a word now on port 3671. We talked about this both here in these roadshows and in other KNX UK events, and also from the main KNX organisation. Port 3671. It's what we use to communicate on with KNX Net IP, and quite often we find that gets opened on routers for port forwarding and things like that. Thousands of networks still have this open. And they're still highly vulnerable then, because what this means is that a hacker can go through port 3671. There's no security on that, connect to a KNX IP router, and then do things on the network. And that can include bricking your devices. So we need those closed. So try and use secure remote access gateways. So there's various devices out there that will sit in there and provide either a VPN or a cloud proxied service that then is secure, encrypted. Make sure that you're using KNX Secure, so either data secure fully on the whole twisted pair or RF bus line that you've got. It's automatically there on the IoT side of things. But if you can't get it on all of your network, use it where you have to, either with segment couplers that we're using KNX security proxies, or IP secure. So that's going to be on the IP traffic side. Set up VPNs, set BCU keys. So BCU keys, we don't see that very often, but you can set that up on a project, and that will prevent programming without using the BC, unless you've got the BCU pin. Make sure that you know what the BCU pin is, because it's very, very, very difficult to do anything about a device that has been locked with a BCU pin that you don't know. I'd recommend, if you're going to use BCUs, make sure that BCU pin is inside somewhere like the panel. So if anyone else comes along and needs to do anything on that system, they've got it to hand without having to dig through loads of documentation to find it, because it's the sort of thing that you may come back to 5 years down the line and not know. Somewhere like inside a panel is probably secure enough, but it depends on your installation. You can use the QR code here to check your own network. So you could be at a customer's premises or your own network. Go to that URL, go to that QR code, and it will check to see if your port 3671 is open, if you're insecure or not. Use this as an opportunity to go to clients who've got this port forwarding set up and change it. You'll be able to put some device in there that does a secure remote access, no problem at all. It's an easy upgrade to make, and makes a massive difference and protects your client from having their project hacked or bricked in some other way. So what are the takeaways on ETS 6.4? So get the latest version. It's got all the known vulnerabilities resolved. It's got full KNX secure support, security proxies and segment couplers. It's got extended support for the new KNX IoT point API devices. Multi-linking makes it quicker to do linking. We've got link folders and collaboration mode in the project archive for easier project management. We've got downloads via serial number by default, so that makes it quick to commission devices. And we've got the project access assistant for security, simplicity, and peace of mind. Now, I haven't actually talked about that, but we're going to talk about it in the next bit, which is an overview of some ETS apps. So let's look at that first one, the project access assistant. So what is it? It's a new app introduced in ETS 6.3. It was designed to enhance workflow efficiency and security. So as we do projects with KNX Secure, those projects have to be password protected. But of course, every password you put in, you're going to need to store somewhere and also use. Now, as soon as you put a password on a project, every time you do various things like export it, back it up, pass it over to someone else, open it, it wants you to put that password in. And what the password, or the project access assistant, I should say, does is it allows those credentials to be stored securely in My KNX, so online inside the KNX organization, just making it easier to get your project access done. So you don't need to keep re-entering the password. It knows it from the ETS app. It makes it a lot quicker to open the projects. It allows you to use then different projects or passwords per project, which sometimes, if people have got lots of projects, they may not do. They may just use the same one, which is obviously less secure. It's hashed for security, so it can't be retrieved or reversed, and it means that you can export easily without having to use that password. It just does it for you. So it keeps the workflow quick, but gives you the security of having passwords in there. Of course, you probably want to find a secure way of having that password around so you don't forget it. You've got it to hand. Certainly if you need to pass it over to another integrator or to client, for example, but fundamentally this helps your workflow. Can you change the project password? Yeah, you can. You just go in and change the existing password in your project, and it will do it. Can I or anyone else see the password? No, not even KNX guys can get that password out It can't be viewed in plain text. If you share the project, do you need to provide the password? Yes, you do. But if they also use the app, then they'll save the password in their My KNX account, and that will be fine. So it's only if you then change the password, one of you, that you'd have to then re-enter the password when you open the project. So here's an example. So we've created a project. It's protected. We've got to put a password in the first time we open it, or whenever we open it. And you'll see here, this one hasn't got the project password manager. So we're always going to have to enter this password every time. Now, if we get the project password manager from the ETS App Store and install it and start using it, then that box goes away. We also get a new box down in our settings, which is this one here, which is project access, which says store the project access details in My KNX. So that's turns that option on, and then basically enables this project access storage back in your My KNX. And then next time you open the project, it will ask you for the password the first time. You'll put it in, it will then save that away in My KNX, and you won't have to put it in again. It'll just then every time you open the project, export the project, whatever else, it will use that password and keep your workflow nice and simple and straightforward. Next one, Bulk Linker. So this is a brand new app that's been developed, and this is trying to help us do even more linking more efficiently. So it's like multi-linking, but on steroids, basically. So it allows us to link objects to existing groups, objects to objects to create new groups. We can import serial numbers, and basically you set up your group objects, these links that you want. You'll set those up, and it will then do all of those in one go. So it gives you features that multi-linking doesn't have at the moment. So can you link any group object with an existing group object by means of a new group address? So a pair of group objects with a new group address. Yes, you can do that. You can create that new group address. Can you create a new group address and link those to existing group objects? Yes, you can. You can't do that with multi-linking. Can you modify the suggested new group address before creation? Yes, you can. Can you import and export KNX serial numbers in bulk? Yes, you can. And can you use semantics? Yes, you can. So this is when the semantic part of things is coming in, and multi-linking is using this as well, and we'll use it more efficiently as time goes on. But the bulk linking is using it as well. So the more devices there are that are using semantic tagging and smart linking, the more this is going to be useful. And I think within the next few months, that we're going to see the manufacturers just keep adding smart linking into lots of devices, and as soon as they release the next version of their product database for a device, it will have smart linking on it, and make this even more valuable and powerful. Project tracing is the next one. What's ETS project tracing? Well, it logs all the changes made to a project. Now, ETS 6.4 kind of already does this to a certain extent. So you'll see, for example, when you look in the details of a project, you'll see a certain amount of information, but there's some stuff it won't do. It won't, for example, show you when projects have been opened and closed, just in the default tracing stuff. But if you've got the ETS project tracing app, it'll add extra information in there. So it'll make all the changes, that any change at all, it will log. It will put those in chronological order. It will give you a detailed history of those modifications, and give you lots and lots of extra information, which is really useful if you're, say, passing information to maybe your client has got access to a project, or a third party has got access to the project, and you want to know what they've done, if they've changed anything. You'll know that exactly, because it goes along with the import and export. So it's really useful for monitoring projects under construction, because you can see what's been happening. It's automatically activated on project creation. So we're already doing some of that natively inside ETS, but it's going to do far more with the project tracing app, and see what's been done by others. So if somebody's changed something and you didn't want them to, or they've made a mistake, you can see that, or you know that something has been done. So you've got this project compare feature, which we've got when we try and look at two projects. So if we take a project out of the archive and it's different to the one we've got in our local project, we can compare the differences. If we've got a project where we passed it over to someone else and it's come back, we can look at the differences there, and we can see if we want to keep or change any items in there. So for example, here it's showing that the local project is different, and the archive project has a number of things in there which weren't in the local project. So someone else has changed those, put it in the archive, and now our local project version of that is different. And we can see that in the project compare. And there's an article linked here which is on the KNX Association website, which goes into more detail about this. And the useful thing is this tracing can't be turned off by the customer. So you're always going to see these changes. And it just means you're always going to see those things. Whatever anyone else has done, you'll see that stuff because it can't be turned off. So that's really useful for checking what's been done. Has anything untoward been done? Has anything unwarranted or something that's not going to be covered now by your support or whatever else it might be? You can use the project tracing feature to track these changes. So can it be turned off? No. All projects inherit this. Can't be deactivated. You get these in a report, the changes in a report, and you can filter them out if you don't want your customer to see them. So if you want to see produce a more consolidated or less detailed project report, you can do that. And can the automatic entries be deleted? No, they can't. Only the manually entries can be removed. So when you put stuff in the project log yourself, those can be deleted, but not anything that's automatically created. So that is the three ETS apps that we wanted to talk about. So please use them, and I think there's going to be somebody today is going to have the win some of these, so these licenses, so they'll be able to use them, and I invite you all to do that. There's also a really useful playlist of videos that KNX organisation have got out on YouTube, which show all of these things, walkthroughs of those, show them in use. Really useful to take a look at. So scan the QR code here, have a look at the URL, and that will take you to that playlist on YouTube, and it's really useful. There's some great other content on the KNX Association website. There's training on there that's available to you. There's lots of support information. There's lots of stuff out there on what ETS 6 and even specifically ETS 6.4 is doing now. So I really encourage you to take a look at that. So hopefully that's all been useful information, and look forward to getting your feedback and any questions, and yeah, enjoy using ETS 6.4. Many thanks.